How could I have known that the simple act of buying a coffee maker would completely change my life? At 60 years old, I thought surprises were a thing of the past. My days were predictable. My house was quiet. And after 15 years of being divorced, I believed that whatever twists life had left for me, they would no longer involve love, connection, or the spark of something new. But sometimes, life has a strange way of reminding us that it's not done with us yet. It all started one ordinary morning. The sun spilled gently through the curtains of my living room, brushing across the same furniture I had seen for years. My home had become a safe haven, yes, but also a quiet prison of routine. I lived alone, and with that solitude came small habits, little rituals to fill the silence. The hum of the kettle, the shuffle of my slippers against the wooden floor, the occasional hum of the television, even when I wasn't watching. That morning, though, I decided to change one tiny detail of my routine. My old coffee maker had broken down, and rather than keep using instant coffee, I told myself, why not? Go get a new one. Something small, something to make mornings feel fresh again. It seemed like the most trivial choice in the world, but looking back now, I realized that choice set everything into motion. When I arrived at the store, I didn't expect to meet anyone. I didn't expect conversation, let alone kindness. And I certainly didn't expect Jake. He was standing in the small appliances aisle, helping another customer when I walked past. His energy was impossible to ignore. He had that unshakable brightness, the kind that belongs to people who are young enough to still believe the world is wide open for them. He laughed easily, moved quickly, and spoke with warmth that carried across the aisle. When I struggled to lift a box off the shelf, it was Jake who stepped in. Here, let me help you with that, he said, flashing a smile that felt both polite and genuine. That was the first time our paths crossed. What I didn't know then was that this young man, 23, full of energy and curiosity, would not only carry a coffee maker into my house that afternoon, he would also carry in the possibility of something I thought I'd lost forever. I let him help me bring the box to the counter. His friendliness made the moment less transactional, more personal. By the time I paid, he had offered to help set it up. Normally, I would have declined. I wasn't in the habit of letting strangers into my home. But there was something in his eyes, some mix of sincerity and enthusiasm, that disarmed me. And so, with a small nod, I agreed. It felt innocent enough. After all, what harm could there be in letting someone help with a coffee maker? But as we drove to my house and I unlocked the front door, I had no idea that an ordinary day was about to unfold into something extraordinary. The drive home was short, but for me it felt unusually long. I hadn't had a guest in years, let alone someone so much younger, someone with such an effortless charm. My house was my private world. Every object in it held pieces of my solitude. My bookshelves lined with novels I'd read and reread. The blanket folded neatly on my couch, though rarely used by anyone else. The small kitchen table where I ate every meal alone. I suddenly worried about how my home might look through his eyes. Would he notice the emptiness? Would he sense the loneliness that seemed to linger in the corners of each room? When we stepped inside, Jake paused, glancing around. "You have a really cozy place," he said warmly. It wasn't much, but the sincerity in his voice made me see my home differently. Like maybe it wasn't just a place of isolation, but one of quiet comfort. He carried the coffee maker box into the living room, and as he set it down, his eyes caught something on the couch. A stack of crossword puzzles I had been working on. A sweater I'd tossed carelessly after a long day. A book left open, face down, as though waiting for me to return. These were the ordinary remnants of a solitary life. But to him, maybe they looked unusual. I flushed slightly, embarrassed by my clutter. "I wasn't expecting company," I said quickly. Jake chuckled. "That's the best kind of company, unplanned. It keeps life interesting." There it was again, that youthful ease, that ability to turn awkwardness into something light. I realized then how long it had been since I'd felt that energy around me. As he unpacked the coffee maker, Jake kept talking. He asked me about the books on my shelves, the paintings on the walls, the music I liked to listen to. Simple questions, yet no one had asked me things like that in years. It wasn't just curiosity, it was genuine interest. For the first time in so long, My house was filled with more than silence. And when our eyes met briefly, unexpectedly, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in decades. A quiet spark. It startled me. I quickly looked away, busying myself with putting away the box. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. Jake worked carefully, unpacking the coffee maker as though it were a complicated machine. Even though I knew it wasn't. His hands moved quickly, confidently, and he explained each step as if he were giving me a tutorial. I couldn't help but smile. "You're awfully thorough for a coffee maker," I teased. He grinned. "Hey, it's important. Coffee is serious business." The lightness in his tone made the moment feel less like a chore and more like company. Genuine company. Something I hadn't experienced in years. When the machine was finally ready, he poured water into the tank, pressed the button, and waited. The faint hum filled the room, followed by the aroma of fresh coffee drifting into the air. It was such a simple thing, and yet it felt almost magical to me. As the smell lingered, Jake leaned back against the counter and looked around again. "So, do you always live this quietly?" he asked. I hesitated. No one had asked me that before. "Quiet can be comforting," I finally said. "But yes, it's been just me here for a long time." He nodded thoughtfully. "It's peaceful," he admitted. "But I don't know if I could do it. I like noise, people, movement. I'd go crazy in silence." I chuckled softly. "You get used to it. Silence becomes a friend after a while." But even as I said the words, I realized how much I had convinced myself of that truth. Silence hadn't always been a friend. Sometimes it was just silence. Empty and echoing. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the steady drip of coffee into the pot. And yet, in that quiet, I felt something shift. His presence filled the room in a way that pushed the loneliness back. When the coffee was ready, I poured 2 mugs. My hands shook slightly, betraying a nervousness I hadn't felt in years. I set 1 cup in front of him. "Thank you," Jake said with that same easy smile. He took a sip, then raised his eyebrows in approval. "Perfect. See? Totally worth the effort." I laughed, more freely than I expected. That laugh startled me. It had been so long since I had heard my own voice sound that alive. As the conversation flowed, I found myself sharing small pieces of my life. The books I loved, the garden I tended, the way I used to dance when I was younger. And he listened. Really listened. At some point, his eyes lingered on mine, steady and warm. "You know," he said quietly, "most people I know my age don't even think about things like this. But hearing you talk, it makes me realize there's so much more to life than rushing around." Something inside me softened. Here was a young man, barely starting his adult life, yet he was speaking words that touched me deeply. And that's when it happened, the first real connection. Not spoken, not planned, not even fully understood. Just a spark. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible.